Hello, and welcome to Waves of YA podcast, focused on young adult literacy, brought to you by our Ocean County Library's Teen Literacy Workgroup. My name is Sade, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am from the Beechwood branch. Joining me today I have, and you can introduce yourselves.
My name is Kel Rowan, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm from the Toms River branch.
My name is Maya Vanderbilt, my pronouns are she, her, and I also work at the Toms River branch.
My name is Lexi, my pronouns are she, her, and I work at the Plumstead branch.
All right, so lovely to have all of you here today. Today's episode is Diversity and YA. Over the last few years, there has been a significant increase in the visibility of diverse characters and authors in young adult books. This has presented an opportunity for more teens to see themselves reflected in books they read and for others to be exposed to those cultures that are different from themselves. Today, we will be discussing our favorite diverse reads, authors, and why diversity in YA is so important to teens. And, well, important to us too. So let's just go ahead and get started talking about this. Our first question is, why do you read diverse books? And I'm going to start with Lexi.
Yeah, sure. So I read diverse books because representation matters. When I was in high school, I didn't really see myself represented in the books I was reading. And I think it would have made my teenage years a lot easier, or at least more bearable, if I had seen some representation and some validation through reading with people who identified like I did.
Yeah, definitely. I also, growing up, really didn't see that much representation, and I definitely see a lot more now. How about you, Maya?
I just really like learning about other people and other cultures. Reading more diverse books is a gateway into that. And it also helps to be able to suggest books to our teens that come into the library. If I read more books about characters that they might see themselves in as well, you can always find somebody that you can relate to on some level that may not look like you or comes from a different background. And I like that.
Exactly. And how about you, Kel?
It's the same for me for a lot of the other reasons that others spoke about. I like being able to see myself reflected in the books that I read, and it's nice to just be able to see somebody going through the same things that I went through, either like now or as a teen. It's just nice to have somebody to relate to. I also think it's nice to read books that have people that are different than us in them, because so much of the media that we see online is curated only to our specific search habits and our experiences and things like that. So we might not see it as much in our phones or on TV. So seeking out in books is like a really great way to just get to know other people and what their experiences are like.
Exactly. I agree with all of you. Diverse books really do give us a great perspective of other individuals' backgrounds, and I enjoy reading them just for that reason alone. Obviously other reasons, but definitely that one. So the next question I have is, what kind of diverse reads do you gravitate towards? And Maya, how about you start that one out for us?
I tend to gravitate towards fantasy, romance, mystery, and realistic. Kind of all over the place. But those are the genres that I specifically try to read, and then I look for characters in the genres that either look like me or have similar experiences to me or don't. And it's also nice to find diverse characters in books where they're not necessarily the main character, but they end up kind of taking over the story because they're such a complex character. They're really well written. Those are my favorite books. So,
how about you, Kel?
I also love diversity in fantasy novels specifically, just because I feel like fantasy novels typically have a lot of the same characters. So it's nice to see a fantasy novel that brings in a lot of different diversity. I feel like they're trying a little bit harder to create a more interesting story about bringing in different identities and then also cultures. So when they're pulling on different cultures, you're getting different storylines than the traditional vampire dystopian or, those kinds of things that we see a lot. Obviously, I gravitate more towards LGBTQ diverse reads because I'm part of the community, but I do like to seek out those diverse fantasy novels. And then I really like to see diversity in books where it's not all about the person's diversity. It just happens to be part of their storyline that they have one of those identities, instead of it being all about them coming to terms with their identity or struggling with it and things like that.
Yeah, and I definitely have seen more of an increase in diverse characters in fantasy. And I think that's something great that's, I feel like, has recently happened in the last few years that I've been enjoying, because I never really read fantasy, and some of the characters and the covers of the books have drawn me in, and it's definitely something cool to check out.
They are doing an excellent job with like the fantasy covers representing other diverse characters. So many different ones that I've been really impressed by recently. So I just wanted to say that I agree on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I tend to really gravitate towards graphic novels. I love graphic novels across really any genre, but I think especially with diverse YA reads, I really love seeing it kind of laid out all before me. I really like dealing with books that kind of focus on gender identity, sexuality, especially disability. I think those are all really interesting topics. A lot of them are part of my life already. So I think I'm really drawn to those naturally. But I also like, for the same reason that other people have said, I like reading diverse books that are different than my own experience, because it kind of lets me open the door into other people's experiences. I think it's super interesting to kind of get out of your own head and explore what other people are going through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so how do you make sure you are reading a wide range of diverse books? Cal.
My favorite way to do it is by browsing books. That's the way that I've always chosen books that I want to read. I remember coming to this library when I was younger, and I would just walk through the stacks, just check out the new books, and just pick up anything that had an interesting title or an interesting cover instead of seeking out anything specifically. So I just like to go through and making sure that I'm picking up books that have diverse titles or diverse people on the covers, or I might get the vibe that they're going to have a diverse character. I feel like this is the best way for me to come across diverse books, because if I'm looking for a specific book list that might recommend titles to me, I'm only going to find exactly what I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for books that have people with different cultural backgrounds or that are set in different countries or something like that, I'm only going to find books that tackle that topic instead of being able to come across things that maybe I wasn't looking for.
Yeah, I thought I was the only one that still went to the library and browsed the shelves, because that's sometimes the greatest way to just,
It really
you know,
is.
see what's out there. Like sometimes I'm like, this book has been out for 2 years. How did I miss this?
Yeah.
Just and sometimes you just find some great eye-catching stuff. So I definitely get it. Definitely. How about you, Maya?
Just to go off your last point about finding books that came out a while back and then just coming across them, that happened recently. There was a book that I want to talk about later, came in our processing, and the artwork on it is just so beautiful that I was like, oh, I want to check this book out. And I started reading the description on it, and it's like something that it came out 2 years ago in 2019, and it's one of my favorite diverse reads. But I like to browse too. I usually check the new book section, and then also online, like on Libby or Hoopla, specifically on Hoopla, because you can actually just Hoopla is better.
Yeah, I like Hoopla.
Especially for the graphic novels too. So I don't know, like I said, I read lots of different genres, and so I just look in those genres most of the time. And then I also try to make sure that I'm reading for different protagonists. Like I realized most of the protagonists that I read are female, and so trying to make sure that I also read about male protagonists. And thinking about it, some of my favorite diverse reads are about male protagonists, like Dante and Aristotle Discover the Secrets of the Universe, Frankly in Love, Punching the Air, and though they're middle grade books, New Kid and Class Act by Jay Craft two of my
Good
favorite
ones.
novels. Yeah. So do have a lot of male teens that come in, or tweens that come in, and it doesn't matter about the protagonist, but a lot of the times they do want a male protagonist. And so making sure that I have enough recommendations for them, I think is important. But now I feel like I'm going off topic, so sorry.
No, you made a great point. And I think I always end up reading books about, female leads. And lately I've been reading more books too about male leads. And I just started reading this book called The Taking of Jake Livingston by Ryan Douglas. Yes,
That looks so
Douglas.
good.
And oh man, I don't know, I read like over 100 pages like last night, and I was like, this is so creepy, but I just kept reading it. And it's like about a guy, and he's a medium and he's seen all these ghosts. I mean, it's so good. And generally it's not something I would pick up, but I said, as Maya mentioned, I suggest books to tween boys that come into the library and things like that, and I'm just like, I gotta, expand and read more things, and then I'm reading this great book. So I think diversity obviously encompasses many things, and for me, I want to diversify my reading in that way, as reading more different about different gender roles, so to speak. All right, and how about you, Lexi?
Yeah, I've done a lot of things that I think other people have mentioned. I'm a big Goodreads person, so I love to go through Goodreads and like see what other people have shelved with the books I like or books I haven't heard of. I think that's a really useful tool. Another thing is that since I am a small branch manager, I literally get to see every single new item that comes into my branch, which is pretty cool. I get to see and be exposed to a lot of stuff that I would never hear of or really know anything about. So that's been really, really a cool eye-opening experience. I really just kind of get exposed to a lot of stuff just by seeing it come through and having to be processed. Yeah, and I think someone else mentioned this, but I'm very like visual based. So I think seeing library displays also is really great because it's helpful to see what we already own, what we already have, and then kind of focus on, looking up those titles.
Yeah, definitely. Library displays are great for seeing new books and things like that. What are some of your favorite diverse authors, Lexi?
Ooh, see, this is a hard question. I have a lot of really favorite diverse authors. I will keep it short. So, like I said earlier, I'm really drawn to graphic novels. So, a lot of my favorite authors have to do with that. But I will say, so a few of them that I really have loved. I really like Grace Ellis, who does the Lumberjane series. I love those; that are really good. Mariko Tamaki, I really love. She does amazing work. Her books and her art, it just go together so well. They tell a really, really cohesive story. I really also like Molly Ostertag. I think that she's done a lot of cool stuff. She has a book that just came out, a graphic novel that has to do with sexuality that is really cute. It's just came out. The art is fantastic. To be brief, those are a few of my favorite ones right now.
I want to read more graphic novels, and I'm like, as you're talking, I'm just like writing them down. I'm like, yep, yeah, because graphic novels, they have such great stories and the visual. I mean, they just have it all. So, and then to have like great diverse authors to add to them, it's just a whole deal there. All right, how about you, Kel?
My favorite diverse authors are authors that I like, obviously for the books that they write, but also because I like them as people. And so this will make a little bit more sense when we go into the next question. But they're just really cool people, and I like, interacting with them and seeing what they're doing online. But some of my current favorites are Angie Thomas, Tomi Adeyemi, Aiden Thomas, and Phil Stamper. So they're all just great. They do books that are based around people of color and then also LGBTQ topics, and they're all really creative and write in different genres. So I really appreciate their diversity across them as people as well.
Very nice. I know a few of those, but we'll have to chat later because, like I said, I'm writing everyone's suggestions, and I guess I'll be up reading until the end of time, which I'm totally fine with, just letting everyone know. Okay. How about you, Maya?
My favorites are, I love the Yoons, Nicola and David Yoon, Elizabeth Lim, Elizabeth Acevedo, Rashani Choshki, and Jerry Craft. They all write different genres, realistic, romance. fantasy novels in verse and graphic novels, and the nuance in a lot of their novels, talking about their characters' experiences, and the side characters too. I don't know, they're some of my favorites. I don't stalk them, I don't follow them on social media or anything though, but I do enjoy trying to find more of their novels and trying to read them. So.
Oh, you named some good ones. Yes. Wow. Bravo. Yes. Okay. What are your current favorite diverse reads, Kel?
My current favorites are also just like my all-time favorites. So the first one is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. It's just absolutely amazing in terms of diverse fantasy books because she draws on African folklore to create her system of magic and all of the folklore that's present in the novel. And I just love that there's not a single white character in the book, which is not common for fantasy books typically. So it was one of the first books that I ever read that got really creative and it was just really refreshing. The other one that I love is Snapdragon by Kat Lay. She writes graphic novels, and this one's it's a short graphic novel. It's middle grade, and I like that there's a lot of diversity in it, but it's not the focus of it. So it talks about gender presentation and identity, race, and class, but it's more of like a fun story and it has like a witch in it and stuff. So it brings those things in without focusing on them, which is always nice because those things aren't necessarily all that's important about us. And then my final plug is for Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, because that book, without fail, just gives me the chills and makes me cry. And it's about two gay boys, and it's just really good. And the second one will be coming out soon. So that's really got me excited lately.
I love that book as well. And I will say that you can get the audiobook version through the library, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is the one that narrates. It's
Yes.
excellent.
Absolutely.
No
I
way.
listened to it too. It's phenomenal.
So good.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Excuse me while I write this down.
Sade, please.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
have to
first
listen
thing you
to
need
it.
to listen to.
My paper's full of books. I mean, this wasn't, my whole mind behind this podcast. Of course not. It's a great discussion where, I just, had to add to my good reads list over here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Lexi, what are your current favorite diverse reads?
My favorite current diverse reads, I will say, are probably Lycanthropy and Other Chronic Illnesses by Kristen O'Neill. This book is really unique in that it kind of goes into different chronic illnesses and how they affect the main character. She has a really debilitating case of Lyme disease. And it's super interesting because she's so young, and it's just interesting to kind of see how that really impacts her life and how it kind of turns everything upside down. The main characters all are also not white. Some of them are non-heterosexual, really interesting stories. There's also a bit of fantasy in it because I won't spoil it, but there is some werewolf in there. It was just really well done. I really liked it. Another one that I've read recently is probably Everything Sad is Untrue by Daniel Nayeri. I listened to the audiobook, which he narrates, and I love audiobooks that have to do and have really like the author kind of narrating. I feel like it really helps their message come across. This book was so good. It was so good. It was a really easy read. I went through it really quickly. It has a lot of things going on and a lot of diverse issues that he tackles through different stories. And it's a really interesting read. It deals a lot with immigrant status and growing up and being different. I mean, the author discusses in the book, the main character is from Iran and moves to rural Oklahoma. So you really couldn't be much more different than that. It was just a fabulous read. It was really well done. And then I guess the last one I'll mention is, this is a bit of an older one, but That One Summer by Mariko Tamaki and Jillian Tamaki they're work really well together. And I think this book is one of those books that still kind of stops me, even though I've read it several times. It's a graphic novel, but there's just something so disquieting and interesting about the artwork and the color tone they used. It's really good. Has a lot to do with dysfunctional family, different situations that come up as a teen. Super interesting. Would highly recommend it. I think for now I'll stay with those and mention that.
I'm telling you, Lexi, these graphic novels you're naming, like, you make me really just want to read so many graphic novels.
They're so good.
Okay, Maya, how about you?
Okay, so I came prepared to talk about at least two. And the first one was the one that I came across while it was being processed as a new book in the library. It came out in 2019. It's called This Time Will Be Different by Misa Seguria. And it's about CJ Katsuyama. She works in her aunt's floral shop, and floral arranging is the only thing that she believes she is capable of doing. This book, I just loved it so much. CJ's mom works for this company, McAllister Enterprises. The McAllisters have this huge negative history in her town, in that they were buying property from Japanese Americans as they were going into internment camps during World War II. And some of the property was, in fact, her family's flower shop. And they eventually got it back, but the flower shop just hasn't done well financially ever since. And her mom is trying to resell the flower shop back to this company because it's currently owned by her aunt, but it's just her mom's been keeping it afloat financially, so it's not successful to her anymore. And it triggers CJ on going on this protest about the fact that her high school is named after this racist family that has so much negative history with Japanese Americans, not just her family, but other Japanese Americans in the area. And her deciding that this was something that she was passionate about and something that she wanted to fight for. The novel just goes through so many things. It talks about teenage pregnancy, her best friends in the LGBTQ community, and in their high school, she wasn't really accepted at first, and the girl that she was interested in wasn't ready to come out. And so it's about CJ trying to figure out whether or not she can trust this girl or not anymore because she hurt her best friend in the past. And it's just about messy teenagers. Most of the characters are of color, biracial, or queer. And it's about romance and finding yourself and teen pregnancy and abortion and flower magic. And there's just so much going on in this book, but I loved it. And I listened to it on audiobook, and the narrator's dry humor is perfect. So I highly suggest it. And then the other book that I read actually also came out in 2020, but I just read it recently, and it's Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. Man, I love this book so much. And like, it's beautiful. I listened to it on audiobook, and Elizabeth Acevedo narrates one of the characters, Yahira, and then the other narrator narrates for the other main character, Camino. And they just did such a wonderful job. The lyricism, the cadence of both of the characters, the way they speak, the emotions. I was crying like so much reading this book. And it's about two girls, Yahira, who lives in New York, and Camino, who lives in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. The story opens with Yahira saying goodbye to her father for the summer. He's going down to the Dominican Republic. And Camino is waiting for her father to come back to her in the Dominican Republic. Only he doesn't make it because his plane ends up crashing in the middle of the Atlantic. And as she's preparing for his funeral and gathering up the pieces of her life, she realizes that she's been contacted by this other girl that she's never met before that has the same last name as her and looks exactly like her father. And it does a really good job of exploring Dominican versus Dominican American culture and the hardship of belonging to a group but not necessarily belonging. And that was something I could relate to because being African American, I look like a lot of other Black people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we've had the same experiences growing up, sometimes feeling ostracized because of it. And so that was something that is explored in this book. It deals with grief and betrayal, messy families. Speaking of love, Yahira is also an LGBTQ community, and her relationship with her girlfriend is absolutely adorable. I love them so much. And even though it's not like a huge highlight in the book, it's just the moments where they're in there, it's perfect. It talks about classism, human trafficking, prostitution, teenage pregnancy, and discrimination. And it's done as a novel in verse. And I thought it was done so well. And then, again, I think I mentioned before, I listened to it on audiobook and I highly suggest it.
Whoa.
Yeah, what a good pitch.
Whoa. Excuse me, I just have to put this on my Hoopla account real quick. Okay. So,
Oh, actually, those were on Libby. Libby's good.
oh, Libby, it's on Libby. Okay. Yeah. You said the audiobook. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That sounds amazing.
They were great.
I'm sold.
Yay! Please let me know what you think when you read them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. The last one, clap when you land.
Clap when you land. Oh,
wow. Okay. Sounds like it has so many different dimensions in it, with culture and personal life and just everything. Wow. Okay.
Yes, be prepared to cry.
All right, I don't have my tissue. Okay. Thank you. So, the next one is, do you follow any diverse authors on social media? If so, does this help you connect with their work if the diverse identity is not one you belong to? Lexi.
So yeah, definitely. I definitely follow some people that I really admire on social media. I think it definitely helps me connect to their work because it makes them and their identity that much more real to me, that I get to connect with them on this other platform. I think that it especially is impactful for me if it's not like something that I'm directly involved with or a part of a community within my own life. I love seeing kind of people's like personal ins and outs of what their day-to-day is, or what moments they choose to put on social media, whether that's to celebrate or commiserate or whatever. I think it's a really powerful tool. It also, to me, and I would love to hear everyone else's opinions on this. To me, it makes them feel like incredibly accessible. I think it makes them seem as if they are maybe not like a friend, but maybe someone that, I don't know, you could talk to in like a class or a coworker or something. It just, I don't know, to me, it makes them that much more real of a person. I think that it is just something, and I'm not a huge social media person, but I definitely think that following like and connecting with diverse authors is something that I really like.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And when we had Crystal, I'm gonna say her name wrong, Crystal Maldonado. I think I'm probably saying that wrong. She wrote Fat Chance Charlie Vega.
Yeah.
We had her for Dive Into YA, and I actually watched it and listened to her and everything before I even read the book. And after listening to her talk, read the excerpt, answer our questions, I connected with her. I was like, well, I got to read this book.
Yeah.
I read it in like one day. I was like, so sometimes having that connection with the author and seeing them, and I don't want to say like, it's just, you have that different connection and you don't know them, but, get to know them, on, different social media platforms. It's like, oh, I want to read your book more. And what else are you doing? And, things like that. So I definitely get it. That definitely makes sense. Definitely. How about you, Kel?
So going off of Lexi's point, I do think that social media really helps people realize how accessible authors are. Authors aren't like a lot of other celebrities, quote unquote, because they are so active on social media and they're so accessible. And sometimes they don't have as many followers as you would expect. So there's somebody that you could tweet at, and there's probably a pretty good chance that they're going to tweet back at you. And it's just, they definitely are more accessible. And I think that maybe some people don't realize how they could have the chance to connect with these different authors by following them on social media. Authors are definitely the most active on Twitter, unfortunately, because I really don't like Twitter, but I follow quite a few diverse authors there. But luckily, some of the ones that I like are also active on Instagram. My favorite is Angie Thomas. She wrote The Hate You Give. She's super active on Instagram. She's always posting about her mom and her dog and the hilarious things that her mom says. And you also get a peek into her relationship. She's really good friends with author Nick Stone, so it's just funny to see them interacting with each other and the fact that these authors that we love are also friends with each other. So I really like following her specifically, and it definitely helps me connect with them. And one of the things I really like about it is that I think that it shows a really good reality model of how the teens they write about could grow up. So they're always writing about their teens and their teenage years, and you don't really know quite where their lives are definitely going to go. But coming from their perspective and seeing how they turned out, probably drawing on their own experiences in their books, it's like, okay, so this is where, the main character of that one book could grow up and become an author who has this dog and has this funny relationship with her mom. I really like getting insight and a look into the reality of their lives and then possibly the reality of their characters' futures.
Sorry, I was just following Angie Thomas on Instagram. I didn't realize that she'd post all that. So
Oh, yeah, and her dog's super cute.
I'm just like, oh, does she now? Okay. All right. So, how about you, Maya?
So I definitely agree with all the positive points that Lexi and Kel mentioned before for following authors on social media. That being said, I've recently been deleting or unfollowing people. I was following, no, I was following a few authors on Instagram because that's the platform I'm most active on. But I also like to write, and I find that if I follow authors, I get distracted in what they're doing in their lives. So I can't. Yeah, that's the only reason I started unfollowing people. It's nothing to do with them. It's like Kel said before, it's always interesting to get a peek into their lives and see the relationships and stuff like that they have with other authors. But yeah, personally, I just had to take a step back. But I do like to watch interviews, especially after I've read a book, to get more insight on where they were coming from, see if there was something I missed after I've read a book, or just to see what else they've done. Like, for example, after I read Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, just because that's the last book that I mentioned, I went on YouTube and found one of her interviews and then also some of her slam poetry. She's a poet, so that was really interesting to listen to and see. So that's my social media experience. Sorry.
I got you. No, sometimes you have to take a break from social media. That happens. But writing, okay, very nice. So, why do you think it's important for teens to read diverse books? And Kel.
I touched on this a little bit before about the fact that we don't typically encounter a lot of diversity on social media if that's not what we're seeking out or what we tend to follow just because of all the algorithms. So the diversity that we do see in other forms of media is definitely beneficial. Like, it's interesting to watch a movie or a TV show that has that character in it, but it definitely feels more fictionalized because you know that you're just watching a movie or a TV show. Whereas I feel like when you're reading a book, you're getting insight into a person that's actually part of that community that you're reading about. So it's coming directly from the imagination or the experience of a diverse author. So it's more special and it's definitely more personal than just watching this fictional character on screen, because you know that it's going straight from their, brains through their hands to the book. So I think that reading diverse books is a special experience for teens. The other thing that I wanted to touch on as part of this question, because we were talking about it a little bit earlier, is how reading diverse books helps with self-reflection. Earlier, we were talking about the fact that specifically you, Sade and Maya, were taking a look at what you were reading and seeing gaps that you needed to fill. Like, you weren't reading a lot of books that have masculine characters. You tend to go towards books that have people who share identities with you. So I think by reading diverse books, not only do we reflect on, our own reading practices and maybe question why we're drawn to the things that we're drawn to, we also, when we're reading them, it kind of makes you self-reflect on how your experiences are different from what you're reading and how maybe you can become a better person or a better ally to that community by reading those personal books from these diverse authors.
Yeah, and you made definitely some great points there. And for me, as an African American woman growing up, I didn't really see myself represented. So seeing even in YA books, I'm like, wow, this is a fantasy book, and African American woman is the lead, so I'm gravitating to those books. But now, like I said, I'm trying to expand more and learning about other cultures. And, it's just so great to be able to do that through a book and a story. And a lot of these stories, I'm not even realizing it. And the story may be, set in the future, or, a kingdom about fae and witches, yet I'm learning about the Native American culture at the same time. So books definitely offer that, and it's really great. It's a way to learn about other cultures and enjoy some fiction at the same time.
Absolutely.
Okay, how about you, Maya?
I don't know that I have much more to add to that. I completely agree with both of you. I think it's important for teens to see themselves depicted in books in whatever setting it is, whether it's fantasy or romance or science fiction or in a graphic novel. And I think it's also important for them to be able to resonate and connect with characters that don't have similar experiences to them. You can have similar personalities or maybe a similar family dynamic. Maybe you come from like a really dysfunctional family, but the kid in the book you're reading about is Indian and you are Black or something like that. I think, or they're disabled, you are part of the LGBT community. You could be both. The intersectionality, there's so much there that you can experience in books. And so I feel like it's really important for kids to just explore and find characters that they connect with, find stories that they connect with, whether it's different from their experience growing up or not.
I think you bring up a really good point, Maya, when you were talking about the fact that even if you're reading about a character that's different than you are in certain ways, you can find those similarities. And I think that's one thing that we can really stress to teens is that you can find similarities in the characters while also being able to learn something new because one aspect of their identity is different than yours. So I thought that was a really great point.
Exactly. Thank you.
And I think sometimes you can find that unexpected connection with a character. Of course, I can't remember the title, but I was reading this book and the character was African American, but her best friend was Caucasian but hard of hearing. And I actually found more of a connection with her because I'm hard of hearing too. And the person had hearing aids, and she was fussing, and I fuss all the time with my hearing aids, and I was like, man, I really get you. Like I am feeling this. I am totally connecting with you, and and like I think she dropped hers. I'm like, drop mine all the time. Should not do that, but I do. So though when I set out to read the book, I was like, oh wow, this person, she's African American and she's like super happy, but she's trying to figure herself out and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I'm reading I totally took a detour and was totally into her best friend connecting in that way. So, I mean, sometimes you make that unexpected connection, so to speak, in different ways. And in that way, it was her friend in that aspect of a diverse difference. How about you, Lexi?
I think everybody made really, really great, really interesting points. I don't know that I have too much to add. Pretty much like others said, I think that diverse reads are a really great way for teens to kind of understand, get exposed, and kind of flesh out other identities, others than their own. I think it's super important because especially if you are a teen and you live in, let's say, an area that is predominantly white or middle class, I think it's a great way to understand this is not the entire world. This is not how everybody looks, not how everybody grows up. So it's a good way to get that experience of how different everyone is in the world and how many different identities there are. And then I think on the other side of that coin is, like I said earlier, representation matters. I think it's really validating and encouraging to see yourself or maybe some sort of aspect of yourself reflected in what you're reading. So I think that it's great for a bunch of different reasons, other than I also think diverse reads are incredibly interesting.
Exactly. Okay, so our last question, which I think is extremely important, is what's your next diverse read? And I had mentioned earlier, the one I am currently reading right now is The Taking of Jake Livingston. And I talked about it a little bit. He's a 16-year-old and he sees dead people everywhere. He can't decide what's worse in his life, being a medium, where he's forced to watch the dead and they play over and over the last minutes of their life in like a loop. So he constantly sees that over and over again. And also, he is one of the few Black students at his prep school, and he has to deal with racist teachers and students. So he's got a lot going on. Usually, the ghost that he sees doesn't bother him, but all of a sudden, one does. So he's got a lot going on. It's really good. Like I said, I read a lot last night. It's kind of creepy. Actually, it's pretty creepy, but it's really good. So that's what I'm reading, and you should definitely check it out. So how about you, Lexi? What are you reading?
I am one of those people that have a huge to read pile that constantly grows. So this has been suggested to me like 50 different times by 50 different people. I need to read Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. Let me know if anyone in this group has read it. I keep hearing about it, but I've never actually gotten to it because my list is long and that's just kind of how I go. But yeah, so that one is something that I'm really looking forward to reading.
I have heard a couple people mention that, but I haven't read it. But some people told me to read that one too. So I guess I should put that to the top of my pile too, I guess. Okay, how about you, Cal?
Yeah, so that one is definitely on my to read list too. It's
You too.
basically any LGBTQ book from like the last 2 years is on my to read list, but that's towards the top. But two diverse books that I have my eye on that I'd like to read next. Earlier, I did mention that Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe is getting a sequel, so that's Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. Comes out on October 12th. I'm super excited. I'm definitely going to read that one. And then I really want to read We Are Not Free by Tracy Chee. I actually took quotes from that book for some like book talks I was doing, and the quotes were just so beautiful, and it gives a unique perspective on Japanese internment camps during World War II with the fact that teens are at the center of the story. So I just was definitely pulled in by the quotes of that book, and I definitely want to read it.
Okay, how about you, Maya?
I am looking forward to reading Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. She was actually one of the Dive into YA authors that was here back in July, and I got to interview her. She was wonderful. She's one of my favorites because she does a lot of retellings or dives into East Asian mythology. So Six Crimson Cranes is supposed to be about, I love retellings. I'm sorry. Fantasy retellings are my favorite. So Six Crimson Cranes is supposed to be a retelling of the Grimm brothers, The Six Swans, and it's supposed to be set in East Asia. It just gives me like Hayao Miyazaki vibes, and I'm so excited. I don't know why I haven't read it yet. My brain has been like in a fog lately, but that's the one I plan on picking up next.
Okay, great. They all sound like some great books, and I also added them to my list. And now, at least today, my list is really long, and I appreciate that. So that wraps up our conversation today. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out the Ocean County Library's website for more podcasts and our website's calendar on our events page. All titles mentioned in today's episode can be found through the Ocean County Library, free with your library card. If you have any reader advisory questions you would like to be featured on future episodes, please email us at wavesofya@gmail.com. Until next time, happy reading.
Support public libraries. Like, share, and subscribe for more great videos.